My name is Ethan Miller. I am 16 years old and I live in Oakwood Hills, Ohio, a completely normal town in a completely normal state. I wasn't the kind of kid who caused trouble. I studied hard, played a little basketball, and mostly kept to myself. My world felt solid, predictable, built on facts and common sense. I liked knowing how things worked, how history unfolded, the undisputed timeline of events that led us to where we are now. That sense of order was comforting, a clear path through the chaos of being a teenager. I believed in science, in recorded history, in the universal truths we all agreed upon. That was my anchor. But then, 3 weeks ago, my anchor was ripped from the seabed, and my whole world started to drift into uncharted, impossible waters. It happened in AP U.S. History, Mr. Henderson's class. We had just wrapped up the Vietnam War, a difficult but well-documented period. I was ready for Reconstruction, the rebuilding after the Civil War. It's dense stuff, but fascinating. Mr. Henderson was always a bit quirky, a teacher who liked to keep things interesting. Last month, he dressed as Alexander Hamilton and delivered an entire lecture in character. So when he put up the first slide for the Reconstruction era, and it was a picture of a Tyrannosaurus Rex in a three-piece suit standing at a presidential podium with the national emblem, I just figured it was another one of his elaborate jokes. A meme, maybe, to get our attention before diving into the real content. I even chuckled to myself, waiting for the punchline. The punchline never came. Mr. Henderson, with a completely serious expression, continued, President Scales, Scales, make sure you spell it right on the test, was elected by a landslide in 1974. His campaign slogan, solve modern problems with prehistoric solutions, really connected with Americans who were tired of the usual political squabbles. I glanced around, bewildered. Everyone else was scribbling notes, completely unfazed. Jessica, my friend who always got straight A's, was highlighting passages in her textbook. I leaned over to see, and there it was, an entire chapter dedicated to a dinosaur president. Pictures showed President Scales shaking hands with Gerald Ford, throwing out the first pitch at a baseball game, his tiny Tyrannosaurus Rex arms comically extended, reaching for the microphone during his inaugural address. My heart started to pound. This wasn't a joke. This was impossible. My carefully constructed world began to crack. A deep, unsettling problem had just slammed into my reality. I was unsatisfied with this sudden, absurd shift, and the entire world, it seemed, had become my unwitting nemesis. I raised my hand, my voice tight. Mr. Henderson, are we doing some kind of alternate history thing, like that show, The Man in the High Castle? The whole class turned to stare at me, as if I'd just asked if the sky was green. Mr. Henderson frowned, that specific teacher frown that says, I'm worried about you. I don't understand, Ethan. We're studying the Scales era, it's standard curriculum. What makes you think it's alternate history? But he was a dinosaur, I blurted out, my voice trembling. A Tyrannosaurus Rex. Dinosaurs went extinct 65 million years ago. Dead silence filled the room, heavy and suffocating. Then Brad, a football player, snorted a laugh. Dude, what are you even talking about? Are you high? No, I mean seriously, dinosaurs and humans never lived at the same time. They couldn't have a president in the 1970s because they died out long before humans even evolved. Mr. Henderson's frown deepened. Ethan, I think you might be mistaken. Yes, the Mesozoic dinosaurs went extinct, but the Cenozoic dinosaurs, the ones that survived the asteroid impact, evolved right alongside humans. Some even became intelligent. We covered this in freshman biology. Are you feeling all right? Jessica nudged me, her eyes wide with concern. Ethan, really, should we go to the infirmary? Stop pretending, I yelled, my voice cracking. Stop pretending that a living dinosaur was president. Mr. Henderson stood up, a worried crease between his eyebrows. Ethan, I think you should step outside and get some fresh air. We'll talk after class. I walked out, my legs wobbly, and collapsed onto a bench in the hallway, completely breaking down. This wasn't right. This wasn't real. My phone. The internet would set things straight. I typed President Scales dinosaur into the search bar, my fingers fumbling. The results popped up and my stomach plummeted. Wikipedia entry. Scales, 1920 to 2003, was an American politician who served as the 38th President of the United States from 1974 to 1982. As a member of the Dinosaur Democratic Party, Scales was the first theropod dinosaur to be elected president. There were so many pictures. Black and white photos from the 1950s showing a young Tyrannosaurus Rex in military uniform. Color photos from the 1970s of his inauguration, his thin arm resting on a Bible held by a patient-looking Supreme Court justice. My hands shook as I scrolled, past an entire section on the Scales era detailing his achievements. The Dinosaur-Human Reconciliation Act of 1975, the Department of Paleontology, the controversial two-fingered or two-clawed Equal Rights Amendment, and even, shockingly, the Jurassic Park of 1979 park scandal. I found a video, actual footage of President Scales giving a speech. His voice was deep and hoarse, a huge reptile at a podium. Reporters at press conferences had to use specially made tall microphones, which he often knocked over with his tail. There was video of him trying to sign bills with an extended pen held in his tiny claws, sometimes taking 3 tries to get it right. It looked so real, too real. Back in class, I couldn't focus. Mr. Henderson was now talking about the Velociraptor rights movement, the 1976 Brontosaurus labor dispute, and Scales's nomination of the first Stegosaurus to the Supreme Court. After class, he kept me. "Ethan, I'm worried about you. Your outburst wasn't like you. Is everything okay at home?" "Mr. Henderson, with all due respect, none of this is true. Dinosaurs are extinct. They don't exist anymore. They've been extinct for millions of years." He sat on the edge of his desk, looking genuinely concerned. "Ethan, I know being a sophomore can be stressful, but making up outlandish stories won't solve anything. If you're struggling, I can arrange for a tutor." "I didn't make it up. It's the dinosaur president you taught me." "That's right, because there really were dinosaur presidents. Several, in fact, but Scales was certainly the most popular. The Velociraptor president, though, he took office in the late 90s, his term was more controversial." "Shut up!" I yelled, my voice raw. "Don't pretend this is normal." Mr. Henderson stood, his expression changing from concern to genuine alarm. "I'm calling your parents. I think you need to see the school counselor." That was Monday. By Wednesday, I had already been to the counselor twice. Mrs. Patterson, usually someone I liked, sat with an irritating calm, telling me to talk about my denial of dinosaur extinction. "This isn't denial," I insisted. "It's a fact. The Cretaceous-Paleogene extinction event, an asteroid impact, iridium layers in the geological record. Dinosaurs went extinct." She nodded slowly, scribbling in her notebook. "When did you start having these ideas that contradict established history?" "They don't contradict history. They are history." "Real history? Ethan, I want you to consider that you might be experiencing some form of dissociative episode. Sometimes pressure makes us question reality, and this questioning feels very real." I wanted to scream. Instead, I forced myself to ask, "Can you show me any proof that dinosaurs survived?" She turned her computer screen toward me. It was the Smithsonian Institution's website, with an entire section on the evolution of Cenozoic dinosaurs. Scientific papers, peer-reviewed articles, photos of dinosaur skeletons in museums, not fossils, but specimens from the last few thousand years. A full timeline showed how small theropod dinosaurs survived the asteroid by burrowing, then evolved over millions of years, developing greater intelligence and small, functional opposable thumbs. Apparently, humans and dinosaurs had coexisted for millennia. "Jurassic Park?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "The movie where they had to clone dinosaurs because they were extinct." Mrs. Patterson looked confused. "You mean the documentary about theme park safety violations? Ethan, that wasn't about cloning. It was about a park that tried to genetically modify some mentally challenged dinosaurs to make them more aggressive for entertainment, leading to the tragedy of 1993. No, that movie was released in 1993. It's science fiction." "That movie was released in 1995, she corrected gently. "It was based on the Senate investigation into the park incident. Steven Spielberg directed it. If you'd like to rewatch it, we might have it in the library." I felt like throwing up. Thursday, things got even worse. Mr. Henderson was out sick, probably from dealing with my denial. We had a substitute, Mr. Garcia, who continued the unit on President Scales. "Today we're going to watch some footage from President Scales's term," he announced, wheeling in an old television on a trolley. "This is a news report from 1976. The video played. It was grainy, old, but utterly convincing. Walter Cronkite discussed President Scales's approval ratings. Then the scene cut to Scales at a press conference. What truly shattered me was how real it looked. His movements were fluid, natural, not like any animation from the 1970s, which barely existed anyway. His tiny arms waved clumsily as he spoke. His tail swung, knocking over a potted plant, which a Secret Service agent impatiently picked up. A reporter asked about the economy. Scales replied in a deep, resonant voice, "The American people, whether human or lizard, deserve better than economic stagnation." That was the policy of the previous administration. That's why I proposed the midlife Marshall Plan. I stood up, trembling. "This isn't real. It's been edited, a deepfake. It can't be real." The whole class sighed. Someone threw a crumpled paper ball at me. Ethan, please sit down, Mr. Garcia said. No, can't you see how ridiculous this is? Dinosaurs don't wear suits. They can't talk. They don't understand economics. They're lizards, dead lizards. They're not lizards, Brad corrected me. They're theropod and avian dinosaurs related to birds. We learned that in freshman year. In our timeline, they're related to birds because birds are the only surviving dinosaurs. The tiny ones, they evolved into birds. They didn't evolve into politicians wearing ties. Jessica burst into tears. Ethan, you're scaring me. Mr. Garcia turned off the TV. Ethan, I need to take you to the principal's office. Good. Maybe Principal Rodriguez is the only normal person in this building. Principal Rodriguez was not the normal person I expected. He was a velociraptor. I'd seen him before, of course, for 3 years, but I'd never truly looked at him. He was about 5 feet tall, covered in feathers with those signature curved claws. As I entered, he stood from behind his desk, his tail steadily balancing him. Ethan, please have a seat. I hear you've been behaving rather unusually. I just stared at him, at the crest on his head, at the claws holding his pen, at his amber, predatory eyes that seemed to track my every move. You're a dinosaur, I whispered. I am a velociraptor, yes, and you are human. I'm glad we've confirmed our species. Now, what is this about denying the existence of dinosaurs? He leaned back in his specially designed chair, which had a gap for his tail. Ethan, honestly, this sounds like more than just stress. I'm going to recommend you see a doctor. I'll call your parents to pick you up. An hour later, my parents arrived. The drive home was quiet at first. Then my mother turned from the passenger seat. Ethan, honey, what's wrong? Mr. Rodriguez said you've been claiming dinosaurs didn't exist. Not that they don't exist now, Mom, but that they didn't exist in the past. They went extinct 65 million years ago, never co-evolved with humans, and certainly never had a president. My father gripped the steering wheel tightly. Son, I don't know what you're going through, but you have to stop. You're disrupting class and worrying your teachers. Frankly, your denial of dinosaurs sounds like you've been reading too many conspiracy theories online. This isn't a conspiracy theory. This is real history. Asteroid impact, mass extinction. Yes, there was a mass extinction, Mom said patiently. Most of the dinosaurs went extinct. Most of the smaller ones and Tyrannosaurus rex survived. They evolved. That's basic science, Ethan. You learned that in elementary school. No, what I learned was that all the non-avian dinosaurs went extinct. The only survivors became birds. Dad pulled into the driveway and turned off the engine. He looked at me in the rearview mirror, and I could tell he was genuinely scared. I think you need help. You really do. This isn't normal. I'm the one who's not normal. The whole world has gone mad. That's when I made a mistake. I took out my phone, intending to show them the real Wikipedia I remembered. But when I opened it, the content was exactly the same as I'd seen before. President Scales, Dinosaur Democrats, the Dinosaur-Human Reconciliation Act. I tried showing them my old textbooks, the ones from last year. But when I pulled my world history textbook off the shelf, Chapter 14 was titled The Age of Dinosaur-Human Cooperation, with a full-color illustration of a triceratops pulling a plow, a human farmer directing it. This isn't my book, I whispered. Someone switched them. My mother started crying. Oh, baby. That night, they took me to the emergency room. The doctor, Dr. Patel, was kind. Too kind. The kind of kindness people show when they think you're completely insane. Ethan, this is Dr. Patel. Can you tell me how you're feeling? Everyone thinks there was a dinosaur president in history. Everyone acts like dinosaurs and humans have always coexisted. But that's not the case. They went extinct millions of years ago. She nodded, taking notes. When did you first notice this contradiction? 3 weeks ago, Monday, in history class. Have you used drugs, even marijuana? No. Any family history of mental illness, schizophrenia? No, I'm not crazy. I'm not saying you're crazy, Ethan, but you're experiencing a disconnect from mainstream reality, and that's something we need to take seriously. They admitted me for psychiatric treatment, an evaluation. I spent a week in the adolescent psychiatric ward at St. Mary's Hospital. Let me tell you, it was the worst week of my life. Everyone there was so nice, so understanding, so patient, even with me, the kid who thinks dinosaurs are extinct. They organized group therapy, and I had to sit with other teenagers who had real problems, and I tried to explain, no, I'm not delusional. Yes, I know dinosaurs still exist, but they shouldn't exist this way. A girl named Sarah, who was there for severe anxiety, tried to help me. Maybe you've seen some movies or something that made you think they're extinct, like science fiction. I remember learning about it. In school, teachers taught it, books talked about it. Museums talked about it too, the Cretaceous-Paleogene extinction event, Chicxulub crater, iridium layers. But these are all partial extinction events, she said softly. For example, yes, most dinosaurs went extinct, but not all. Smaller dinosaurs survived, just like the Ice Age didn't wipe out all mammals. That's different, that's completely different. My therapist, Dr. Reeves, took a different approach. She wanted me to accept reality, not accept what I want it to be. Sometimes our brains create false memories. This happens far more often than you think. You might be remembering things incorrectly or confusing fictional events with real history. I've been like this my whole life. I've been confused my whole life. It's not your fault. The brain is complex, but the good news is we can overcome this together. They prescribed me medication, antipsychotics, the kind used for people who hallucinate, but I wasn't hallucinating. Everyone else was. Or rather, they were all collectively delusional. Or maybe I'd stumbled into another parallel universe where dinosaurs never went extinct, integrated into human society, and even ran for president. By the fifth day, I was exhausted. The medication made my head spin. Every conversation, every treatment, every gentle correction from the nurse eroded my beliefs. Was I wrong? Had I been wrong all along? Dr. Reeves showed me photos from my childhood. 5-year-old me stood in the contemporary dinosaurs exhibit at the Natural History Museum next to a live stegosaurus. Another showed me at 8 at a petting zoo feeding an animal that looked like a small pachycephalosaurus. Do you remember these? She asked. I remembered a little. The memories were both real and unreal, like a 3D image that only appeared when you relaxed your gaze. I remember that zoo, but there weren't any dinosaurs, only goats. Are you sure? Really sure? Look at yourself in the photo. You look happy. I did look happy, all smiles, feeding a creature that shouldn't exist. By the 7th day, I broke down. Okay, I said. Okay, you were right. I was wrong. The dinosaurs survived. They evolved. President Scales was real. Dr. Reeves smiled. Very good, Ethan. That's real progress. How are you feeling? Tired. That's normal. You've been fighting reality for a long time. You're tired, but now you can rest. I was discharged the next day. My parents came to pick me up. They were so relieved. My mom hugged me tightly for a full 5 minutes while my dad signed the discharge papers. We're so proud of you, Mom said, tears in her eyes. We knew it must have been tough. Yes, I said, my voice flat. It certainly was. We drove home, and I went back to school the next Monday. Everyone was unusually friendly to me. It was a fake, surface-level friendliness, the kind that masks a secret, watchful eye waiting to see if I'd break down again. Mr. Henderson called me aside before class. Ethan, it's good to see you back. Do you feel ready to continue your studies? Yes, sir. Good. This week we'll finish the Scales administration and then move on to the Reagan era. If you need any help keeping up, just let me know. I sat down. Jessica gave me a sympathetic smile. Brad nodded, a hint of awkwardness in his eyes. Mr. Henderson began his lecture. As we've discussed, President Scales's economic policies, though controversial, were ultimately successful. The Jurassic Jobs program got millions of Americans, both human and dinosaur, back to work after the recession. I took notes, highlighting key points in my textbook. I looked at photos of President Scales at various state events, his tiny Tyrannosaurus Rex arm shaking hands with foreign dignitaries, his tail carefully positioned so as not to knock over the antique furniture in the White House. I accepted it all. What else could I do? I had no choice. That was 2 weeks ago. Then yesterday, I visited my grandmother. She lives in a retirement community called Middle Ages Estate, about an hour's drive from Oakwood Hills. We were having tea in her living room, enjoying a quiet afternoon, when she casually dropped a comment that sent a chill straight through me, an icy tremor that woke something deep inside. Have you heard? She asked, dipping a shortbread cookie into her tea. The Scales family is thinking of running again. I froze, the teacup halfway to my lips. What? Well, not President Scales himself. It's his grandson, Scales III, who will be the first third-generation politician in the presidential family. How exciting, my breath caught in my throat. Grandma, oh dear, his grandson is quite the figure in the Lizardmen Democratic Party. He's rumored to be running in 2028 or 2029. That's 3 or 4 years, yes, such exciting times. I voted for his grandfather in 1974. In my opinion, he was the best president we've ever had. He truly united the entire country after Vietnam. My hands began to tremble, this time not with fear, but with a cold, righteous anger. Grandma, can I ask you a question? Do you remember the Vietnam War? I mean, do you really remember it? Of course, dear. Those were terrible days. You know, your grandfather was in the Army. He was in the 23rd Airborne Division with the Pteranodon Reconnaissance Unit. Pteranodon? What? Pteranodon. Flying dinosaurs. They were incredibly useful for aerial reconnaissance. Your grandfather used to tell stories about his pteranodon friend, a lovely dimorphodon named Shirley. I carefully set my teacup down, or I would have smashed it. Grandma, did dinosaurs participate in the Vietnam War? Yes, some kinds of dinosaurs did, mainly the flying ones and some smaller velociraptors. There was a lot of controversy at the time about whether deploying dinosaurs in a war zone was ethical. The Dinosaur Rights Alliance staged a lot of protests. I'd like to use your restroom, please. I locked myself in the bathroom, my hands shaking as I pulled out my phone. I Googled Vietnam War dinosaurs. The search results flooded the screen, page after page of official-looking documents. Pentagon files included sections on Operation Thunder Lizard. Blurry color photographs from the 60s and 70s showed soldiers in helicopters with pterosaurs flying alongside them. News reports about the controversy. Veterans' testimonies of fighting alongside dinosaurs. There was even an entire Wikipedia article about the Raptor Red Scare, where Americans feared communist dinosaurs from China might infiltrate the United States. I stared at myself in the mirror. I was pale, trembling, on the verge of another breakdown. But this time it wasn't despair. It was absolute fury. They had tried to break me, to make me doubt my own mind, to force me into their insane reality. They had succeeded for a week in that sterile hospital ward. But the memories, the real memories, were still there, lying dormant, and my grandmother's words had ripped them wide open. I was not crazy. The world was. And now I would play their game, but I would play it to win. My revenge would not be to convince them of my reality, because that was clearly impossible. My revenge would be to twist their own reality, to poke at the seams of their collective delusion until it began to unravel, not for me, but for them. I would use their own history, their own facts, their own insane narratives against them. I would become the most enthusiastically informed student of the dinosaur era, asking questions that, while rooted in their established history, highlighted its inherent absurdities. I would conform on the surface, but internally I would be a saboteur. The following Monday, I returned to school, my head clear, my purpose sharp. In Mr. Henderson's class, he was droning on about President Scales's efforts to improve agricultural output through cooperative dinosaur-human farming initiatives. I raised my hand. "Yes, Ethan," he asked, a hint of caution in his voice. "Mr. Henderson, regarding the Triceratops-pulled plows mentioned in the textbook, Chapter 14, page 312. It states that early models suffered from issues with maintaining straight furrows due to the Triceratops's natural tendency to wander and its short, wide stance. How did the Reconciliation Act address this? Did it mandate specific training techniques for the Triceratops? Or were there innovations in harness design that compensated for their natural biomechanics? And if the latter, what impact did that have on the early agricultural economy of the Midwest, given the specialized equipment required?" Mr. Henderson blinked. He paused, shuffling through his notes, a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. "That's a very specific question, Ethan. The textbook implies some technological advancements, but doesn't delve into the specifics of harness design. Perhaps you could research that for an extra credit project." A small, cold smile touched my lips. "I'd be delighted, sir." It was a tiny victory, but the confusion on his face, the slight stammer, told me I had found a weak spot. I wasn't denying their history. I was asking for more detail that their fabricated reality might not have considered. I took this new approach to every class, every conversation. When Brad made a joke about Principal Rodriguez, I countered, not by denying his existence, but by discussing the known migratory patterns of velociraptors in urban environments as established by the Department of Paleontology, subtly implying his presence was an ecological anomaly. When Dr. Reeves called for a follow-up session, I was the perfect, compliant patient. "I've been reading a lot about the Scales administration, Dr. Reeves," I said, leaning forward earnestly. "It's truly incredible how the Cenozoic dinosaurs integrated. But I'm curious, in light of the Jurassic Park of 1979 scandal, where genetically modified dinosaurs were made aggressive for entertainment, how did this impact the public perception of therapy for those with dissociative episodes who might struggle to accept the realities of dinosaur coexistence? Was there a specific protocol developed to distinguish between genuine mental health issues and fear-based denial of these, frankly, terrifying creatures, especially in areas with high velociraptor populations?" Dr. Reeves's confident smile faltered. Her pen hovered over her notepad. "That's a complex ethical question, Ethan. One we perhaps haven't fully explored in the contemporary literature on human-dinosaur psychological integration. Bingo. I was making them think, truly think, about the implications of the reality they forced upon me. My ultimate act of revenge solidified over the next few months. I dove deep into the official history not to learn it, but to find its cracks. I became an expert on the Scales era, the Dinosaur-Human Reconciliation Act, the Raptor Red Scare, learning every obscure detail, every conflicting report, every logical inconsistency that their own sources presented. I found out, for instance, that while President Scales was celebrated for uniting humans and dinosaurs, the official records of the Dinosaur Rights Alliance frequently mentioned how many of their protests were brutally suppressed by human law enforcement, even under Scales. The narrative was too neat, too perfect, hiding an underlying tension. I collected these inconsistencies, not as proof that dinosaurs didn't exist, but as proof that their version of history was deeply flawed, even by its own standards. My final act of revenge, my true triumph, came during the statewide history competition, a prestigious event where students presented deeply researched papers. I had always done well in these. This year, my topic was the unseen fault lines, contradictions in the Dinosaur-Human Reconciliation Act of 1975. I didn't argue against dinosaurs' existence. Instead, I meticulously cited official government documents, historical news reports, and even personal diaries from the Dinosaur-Human Cooperation Archives to highlight the myriad ways the Act, while lauded, failed to deliver on its promises for many dinosaur communities, leading to decades of civil unrest and economic disparity. I presented a compelling case, supported by their own evidence, that the harmonious coexistence was a carefully constructed myth, even in their reality. The judges, including a panel of esteemed historians, one of whom was a scholarly-looking pterodactyl, listened intently. My paper was not a denial of their world, but a profound critique of it, using their own logic. I wasn't challenging what happened, but how it happened and why their narrative was so skewed. My presentation ended with a powerful, rhetorical question, drawn directly from a forgotten speech by a human activist of the era. If a history cannot bear the scrutiny of its own facts, then what truly holds our reality together? I won first place. My parents beamed with pride, completely missing the subversive undertones of my victory. Mr. Henderson, however, looked at me with a new, unsettling respect, a hint of genuine doubt clouding his eyes. Even Dr. Reeves, who had attended the competition, approached me afterward. "Ethan," she said, her voice unusually quiet, "your research was compelling. You've presented a very insightful perspective on that era. Perhaps there are more nuances to collective memory than we give credit for." She didn't mention therapy or dissociation. She mentioned nuances. My revenge was working. I had turned their weapon, their collective reality, into a tool to dismantle their certainty. I had used their own rules to expose their lies. My new normal is that I still live in Oakwood Hills, Ohio, a place where velociraptors are principals and Tyrannosaurus rexes were presidents. But I am no longer a victim. I am an observer, a quiet chronicler of their absurdities. I still take my medication, but I know it's not for my sanity. It's to help me blend in, to keep the peace. Every now and then, I look at the old photos from my childhood that Dr. Reeves showed me, the ones of me with the Stegosaurus and the Pachycephalosaurus. I can still access the memory of goats, but now I can also see the dinosaurs, as if two realities exist simultaneously in my mind, and I am the only one who can navigate both. I'm no longer asking if anyone else remembers. I know they don't, but I remember. And knowing that, truly knowing that, gives me a quiet, terrifying power. The unexpected twist. One day, while researching another obscure corner of the Scales era for a follow-up competition, I stumbled upon a declassified document in the deep archives of the Department of Paleontology. It was a memo, dated 1973, concerning a highly experimental, top-secret government project called Project Chimera. The memo detailed early attempts at large-scale reality recalibration intended to unite a fractured America after Vietnam by creating a shared, inspiring historical narrative. The next page was redacted almost entirely, but one sentence remained visible at the bottom, printed in a tiny, almost unreadable font. "Initial human subject, EM, age 15, Oakwood Hills, Ohio," showing promising signs of complete integration. "Proceed with stage 2. I stared at the initials, the age, the location. My blood ran cold, then hot with a fierce, burning rage. They hadn't just created a new history. They had created it for me, and perhaps for everyone. I wasn't in an alternate universe. I was in a grand illusion tailored specifically to my world, and I was their first, most successful test subject. The revenge I sought now had a name, a target, and a terrifyingly personal dimension. I had won a battle, but the war, the real war for my mind and reality, had only just begun.